Welcome to Ranger Stories. My name is Tennyson E. Stead. I'm the creator of Jump Rangers. And this is the show where I read things that I'm writing in the Jump Rangers universe and probably edit and discuss them for your viewing pleasure. Today, we'll be reading Jump Rangers, a game called Conquest, Chapter 24. If you'd like to catch up on previous episodes of Jump Rangers, you can find those episodes on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/at Jump Rangers. Let's begin. How many times in my life have I popped off words about the Psy Rangers? Creepy, I've called them. Weird. Here we are, the Sarge and I, talking through why we think it's a good idea to bring spores to Earth and start a hive, when Phantom looks at the bunch of us through their weird glowing eyes and says, "There's a scout outside and they're listening to everything we say." While Phantom sits there counting down the seconds until soldiers from Mars blow our environment seal and breach our workroom, I get on my feet and put my eyes on Dio. It's now or never. Turning around, Dio makes eye contact with each of the other Rangers in high command. In turn, each of them gives Dio a nod. Turning back to me, Dio looks me straight in the eye. "Go save the world," she said. "Go high and go far." I think just go high and go far. Go high and go far. Maybe you don't know it, but those words mean something in the Jump Rangers. Grown-ups do things by the half measure. When they try something new, they go very slow about it. They like to test things out. They put in a little effort and they wait to see what happens. If something does happen, they start arguing about what it means. Maybe when things settle down a little, they'll try a little more. Grown-ups don't love change. Grown-ups don't love that feeling of being someplace that nobody's ever been or doing something nobody ever thought was possible. When you get right down to it, getting old means thinking about all the stuff you have to lose. Being young means you haven't really built up a life of your own. You're not worried about what happens if you lose your favorite stuff because you haven't been alive long enough for all that stuff to matter. Go high and go far means you have to push that line of what's possible until it breaks. What else are Jump Rangers good for? If we're not making grown-ups stop and rethink what's possible, if we can't make them stop focusing on what's comfortable and focus on what's right, if we can't bring the change we know we're going to need when we grow up and start running things, then what are we even doing here? Don't just take a step. Jump all the way in. Don't wait for them to tell you it's possible. Show them it's possible. Go high and go far. That's exactly what I'm going to do. While Phantom counted the seconds and explained what was happening outside the airlock of our workroom, while the Rangers of High Command prepared to get stormed by troopers from Hawk's Nest, the Sergeant and I grabbed Scrap and flickered off across the galaxy. You already know what goes into getting through the defenses of the infestation on Planet Mist to the hive where our queen is making her spores. Catching and training spore locusts gets easier the more you do it, but it never becomes something you can just drill your way through. Surviving on a spore world takes mindfulness and listening and lots of patience. Looking for shortcuts will get you killed, so we took our time. We caught our locusts. We trekked across the front lines between the Saurian horde and the spore, with dragon space fighters fighting spore wasps while undersoars fight hopelessly to exterminate the spore bugs and the other monsters that scuttle and strut their way across planets like Mist. Past the front lines, the hive of the spore dominated the horizon line. You know what's just occurring to me right now? Is that in this current timeline, Mist has already been secured by Pax's forces. Okay, so I just need to simplify. We trekked our way across the surface of mist. Hmm. We trekked past the spore bugs and other monsters that scuttle and strut their way across planets like mist. Past the front line, past the hives. Okay, on planet mist, on mist, hives dominate the horizon. Here we go. We trekked our way past the spore bugs and the other monsters that scuttle and strut their way across planets like mist. On mist, hives dominate the horizon. Some of them rise as tall as mountains, and others seem like they were smeared across the landscape and dried to a crust. Holes in the hives. We cut our locusts. On a spore world. Okay, on a spore world, hives dominate the horizon. So we trekked past the spore bugs and the other monsters that scuttle and strut their way across planets like mist. We trekked towards the hive. We trekked towards the hive, past the spore bugs and the other monsters that scuttle and strut their way across planets like mist. On a spore world, hives dominate the horizon. Some of them rise as tall as mountains. And others, we towards our hive. It's our hive. On a spore world, hives dominate the horizon. Some of them rise as tall as mountains, and others seem like they were smeared across the landscape and dried to a crust. Holes in the hive are constantly. I, that's my voice. I just hit the mute button by accident. We trekked. We trekked towards. I think I just and took flight. We caught our locusts and took flight. That's simple. On a spore world, hives dominate the horizon. Some of them rise as tall as mountains. So, yes, looking for shortcuts will get you killed, so we took our time. We caught our locusts and took flight. On a spore world, hives dominate the horizon. Some of them rise as tall as mountains, and others seem like they were smeared across the landscape and dried to a crust. Holes in the hive are constantly writhing and buzzing as the wasps and all the crawling critters of the spore make their way back and forth from the hive's queen with any offerings they can bring her. This is a much better chapter than the last chapter. This is way better. I don't know what was going on with me. I need to take another pass at that last chapter. Our journey takes us a few days, which means more than once we need to set down someplace and sleep. When you're on the surface of a spore hive, of a spore world, when you're on the surface of a spore hive, you can feel the hum and rattle of all the activity inside, carried through the paper like structure of the hive itself. Nothing in my life has been less comforting than those vibrations, but sometimes you just need to take a deep breath and accept things for what they are. Something you learn pretty quick once you leave your colony is that people can get used to just about anything. Shrunk down to the size of mice, we rode another spore bug down into the hive where our queen was tirelessly birthing larvae and making spores. Her body was bigger than before, but she didn't look quite as lively. Her life was nearing an end, Scrap told us, but her memories live on in her spores. Soon the toxic garbage she's been eating, mostly from the Saurian wasteland and outposts her spore bugs have been gobbling up for her, will start a chain reaction. Her body will explode and her spores will be launched across the planet of mist so her hives can spread. All of us were doing, all we were doing really was helping her larvae get a little further from the hive than usual. Her spores, her spores get a little farther from the hive than usual. When we found our way into her birthing chamber, she pushed one of her spores out of the glowing green muck she lives in, up on the paper, up onto the paper shore of the chamber's edge. Spiny and porous, the spore was a hard shell built to weather the heat of an atmospheric burn and the impact of crashing into a planet's surface. When that happens, the larvae inside are broken free or they chew their way out. In the ruins of their spore, the larvae start making a new hive. Getting that spore out of the hive was a pretty simple matter of engineering a harness for one of the queen's spore bugs, and then drawing it out of the hive with an octanator as bait. Once we had the spore bug safely away from, and then leading it out of the hive with an octanator as bait. Once we had the spore safely away from the hive, deep in a wasteland of okay. Once we had the spore safely away from the queen, deep in a wasteland of hives that were long since blown up and rotting away, Scrap told us it was safe to flicker. Space warped around us, funneled through the rift like we were some kind of liquid getting pumped through a pipe. We found ourselves high, high above the earth. Slowly, almost gently, the ground seemed to be getting closer. Around us, the spore itself started to heat and sizzle. With another squash and stretch, the sergeant and I found ourselves standing on the top of a snowy mountain. All around us, rust-colored snow piled itself in gentle flurries. In the distance, our spore burned its way down through the planet's surface like a meteor. With a brilliant flash, it slammed into the side of a distant mountain. Watching the snow and the soot settling down to earth, I allowed myself to think for the briefest of moments the job was done. All we needed to do now was answer for what we'd achieved. For answer for our disobedience. In the distance, I heard a familiar kind of scream. Not knowing what to make of it, the Sarge shot me a questioning glance. To him, it might have sounded like some kind of howling animal. Right away, I knew it was the main engines of a Pegasus strike fighter. Someone on Mars had been watching the skies over Earth. When our meteor lit up the atmosphere, they launched a strike team to deal with the spore. Not moments later, a pair of Pegasus fighters roared past us through the mountains and fired their Octonia missiles at the spore's impact crater. Tough as they are, the larvae need time to build their hive. Unprotected, there's no way a spore larva is surviving a blast like that. An Octonium blast. Like that. Spore bugs rely on numbers to thrive. Numbers take time to build. Maybe if we bring a spore down over the ocean, those larvae will have the time they need to get things moving once they settle to the ocean floor. Again, we returned to Planet Mist. Again, we made the long, simultaneously terrifying and tedious journey to the hive and down to the queen's spawning chamber. Once again, my engineering skills helped us get the spore back out to a place where it was safe to flicker. Dropping the spore from high above the earth, we watched from space as the spiky little sphere burned its way down through the down towards the churning, muddy ocean. Flickering us into the atmosphere, Scrap let the sergeant and I watch from alongside the plummeting, flaming ball as it burned down towards the planet. Before my nervous brain even let me consider the possibility that our plan had worked, I could hear the telltale scream of the Pegasi from Hawk's Nest. Roaring past us through the cloudy skies, the fighters launched their Octonia missiles on the roaring fireball. This is good. I like it. When the bluish blast died away, there wasn't even enough of the spore left to splash down into the sea. Watching the last burning shreds, uh, I said burn away as we fell through the air, turn to cinder, uh, uh, dissolve into cinders. Dissolve to cinders. As we fell through the air, The Sarge and I joined hands before Scrap flickered us to safety. Back on our rusty mountaintop, Scrap, the Sarge, and I discussed the rotten fact that Hawksnest was onto us. Could we maybe talk those colonists into helping? What did they actually know about what we're up to? Did they want the Admiral's war? Did they have high command? And did we need to break them out of the out of the out of the did we need to break our friends out of the brig, out of the Martian brig, out of the brig, out of the colony's brig? There we go. And did we need to break our friends out of the colony's brig, Mars? The Sarge and I were going to Mars. And that's the end of the chapter. This was I need to take another look at that last chapter. It was a dud. There's gonna be some rewrites in terms of voice and in terms of the fun of reading. This was a good one to read out loud. I need that. I need that feeling. So that's good. I need to check with Federico to see if we're playing on Saturday, but if we are, we'll have metagame on Saturday at 2:30 p.m. on this channel. If you want to watch it, that's where I sit down with some of the creators of Jump Rangers and play. We're going to be wrapping up the last story this week. It should be good. I recommend coming by. There's a lot of good stuff going on. I've met a cool editor that I think probably will be taking a look at this at some point once I finish my rewrites. We're almost done with this read through. We're almost finished with it. Once that happens, we're going to be working on some of the micro supplements that I've written. What are they called? The data deck files. I'm going to probably get the Lightning job rewritten and updated for 2.0 sometime this week. So we're not going to need to read that on stream. But we'll work on the data files until we get something else going. I like this stream. I hope you join me in future. Check out all the reruns on YouTube at youtube.com/@JumpRangers. Come by on Saturday if you want to. Follow us on our socials. You can get all the details from our link tree. Don't be a stranger, Ranger.